Here we go. Excited for this show tonight, folks. You guys ready? What's happening, folks? Mike Murphy, welcome to Jigsquad. Live and in chat, or if you're watching on replay, excited to have you tonight. It's been 2 weeks. It feels like it's been longer, but I'm really excited about tonight's show. So our guest tonight is Mr. CT Fish Nerd, a.k.a. Mr. Josh Rayner. I actually would be the reverse. It would be Josh Rayner, a.k.a. Mr. CT Fish Nerd. But yet, here is Josh. So I don't need to talk about Josh. I'm going to let Josh introduce himself as we kind of get into this show tonight, talking jigs about largemouth, smallmouth, striped bass, which I'm kind of excited to talk about. But Josh, welcome to Jig Squad. Tell us about you a little bit, my man.
All right. Thanks for having me, man.
I'm
a kayak fishing guide here in Connecticut. I do pretty much everything from stripers, blackfish, albies in the saltwater to smallmouth, largemouth, and pike, and panfish and freshwater. Been kayaking for 15 years. Been in Hobie kayaks for about 6 years. So yeah, it's a lot of fun going out doing that with clients. It's a labor of love for me. And then I also, of course, main reason we're here in the first place, I tie hair jigs and bucktails as well for fresh and saltwater. So
some pretty nice ones too. So you guys have to hear this. So I've said before, like a lot of people will ask, like, "Hey, Murph, how do you decide to post people's pictures on Instagram or for shows?" So the thing is, I like a lot of people, and it's a lot more than I probably can ever do shows on, but we'll work through people in time. But the reason Josh caught my eye is because he had a couple of hair jigs that I did a double take. I'm like, oh, look at those hair jigs. And they look fantastic. And then what happens is I don't just stop there. Like I always go and look, and I'm big on people's story, like who they are, like why they design the way they do. And a lot of times you can tell that by people's style, right? What type of posts they pick, what type of posts they make of pictures, how they carry themselves. And all those things are real important to me because that all becomes part of who somebody is a designer. And even without knowing somebody, like I didn't know Josh, right? So this is my first time. We've connected and chatted a little bit, but this is my first time really having this next type of level interaction. And so I'm really excited because here's the thing. We haven't had anyone on that has been a striped bass fisherman before. And everything we talk about tonight isn't going to be about striped bass, but there is going to be some jig talk tonight that is very unique to some larger style baits. And so I'm excited about all of it. And like I said, it's cool to hear people's perspectives and styles about different things. And you guys have heard me say before, so I'm influenced heavily by the saltwater game, even though I'm a Smalley river rat at heart and everything else. But so Josh, show, I can't even wait. Just show, what was the bait you just held up a little while ago? Let's just go right into it.
This is a Lunker City finesse fish. It's like a 7.5-inch bait.
All right, let me make you big here, buddy.
All right. I'm going the opposite way.
So like a jerk shad,
pretty
bait,
much, yeah.
Jerk.
Yep, exactly. Lunker City. It's made in Connecticut. It's big on the East Coast here. I don't know if you guys even have this out here. Sluggos.
Yes.
They also make some really nice freshwater stuff. The Ribster, which is just a little paddle tail, kind of like a Kayak. Those things are like cheat code in the wintertime. But yeah, no, something like this. I've been throwing this a lot in the backwaters. All the stripers are coming in now. May is a big month for the migration. Nothing huge yet, but a lot of, good size, big schoolies to small keeper size fish. And, I take something like this on the Z-Man swim bait eye hook. It's got that 45-degree turn in it.
Yeah.
And you can sort of swim that. I cast it down current and I swim it up current, and, I'll just rip the hell out of it. And I mean, they just come up and they can't help themselves. They smash it.
What weight is that head that you got on
that one? That one's only a 1/4 ounce, actually.
Really?
So that's a nice, it's like
because the plastic's heavy. The plastic.
Go ahead.
The plastic's heavy, right? I mean, when you start talking
about a little bit of weight to it, I'm sure that's got about a 1/2 ounce.
Right.
The other way, you'd rig something like this would be like a weightless on a big swim bait hook. That's an owner beast 8/0 there.
With a screw lock head, Josh?
Yep, but weightless. Yep. So, sometimes it just helps you to get a little extra casting distance, and just the shape of that head, the way that thing just kind of darts through the water and stuff.
So listen, a cool thing about that, is that the Z-Man? What's the name of that jig?
I believe it's the swim bait eye.
The swim bait eye. Hold that closer again. I have a few comments about it. So guys, the cool thing about this, do you see after you have the roundness of the head, how the lead extends up towards the island? It basically like helps. Like it helps as a keel, but also it helps shed grass a little bit too. So I just my guys that like to throw in the grass and stuff will throw and have jigs designed like that. And I mean, I guess people could say different things about that for like rock and other stuff like that. But it's funny you say that, because so I don't know if you've ever fished them. So I actually grabbed recently, and I'll say why. I'll have to bring them out on the show sometime. They're downstairs. But I grabbed some of the no live bait needed. Have you heard of them?
Yeah,
no live bait needed. Stuff. Yeah, they have jerk baits, paddle tails, but they have a bait called a little mullet, which is like a 5-inch jerk shad, but more like a glider a little bit, right? Not a segmented glider, but just because of the way it's shaped. Well, they're coming out with like a smaller version, like a 3-inch version. And this thing, it's just going to be killer. It's going to be killer for gobies on the Great Lakes, or a goby imitator. And I'm super excited about it. But it's interesting you talked about that eye, because I've heard a lot of people say, I mean, everyone loves some of the Z-Man stuff. It's a stout hook. And I don't know. It's a great hook, right? Yeah. And it's cool talking about plastics and stuff. And we're going to talk more about some tying stuff today. But you guys, Josh pulled that out earlier, right? And he brought it over. And I'm like, I love seeing stuff like that, because you could take something like that and you could fish that thing for bass any day of the week too, for largemouth or smallmouth. And they'll hit larger size baits like that, especially in river systems. Yeah. But I mean, if you're a freshwater guy like me and you go on vacation, you should have baits like that you're bringing with for a rod on the beach or wherever you're at. It's just, that's the fit and function of a jig like that.
Yep, all right. That's a catch-all,
It's a
catches them everywhere.
How often, Josh, let me ask you this. How often, so Darkman, like great comment. Darkman just says, he goes, I fish for whatever's biting, baby. I'm like, yeah, Darkman, I agree with you, buddy. It's one of those things where it's like, you got to fish, but I'll tell you something, you guys got to go look. So here, I'll show, where is, so Instagram for Josh is CT_fish_nerd. You got to go check it out, because even today, because I wanted to be able to comment on some of these things today. So in the striper game, right, the whole thing is about class of fish, right? And so you start looking at pictures sometimes, and sometimes it's the glory pick and the guy holding up a monstrous fish. But Josh is in a kayak, and I'm telling you, I'm scrolling through and I'm looking, I go, 30-pound class fish. That might be a 40-pound class fish. So you start getting into those are like the juice fish, right? Yeah. And I mean, but schoolies are schoolies. You're typically under 20 pounds, smaller size fish, right? But you're hoisting some monsters coming up in that kayak, buddy. And I mean, seasonally, give me an idea how many fish you're going to catch are you going to catch fish in the 20, 30, 40-pound class?
So you get a lot of 30s.
A lot of 30s. See, now I didn't know that.
Yeah. Once you hit about June through November, you see 30-pound class fish in Long Island Sound the whole season. Okay. A 40 or over, I might get one or two. I've never broken 50. I will go ahead and say I've never broken 50. I know a lot of guys who have out of kayaks. I've actually witnessed it personally. I was out with a couple of guys one night, and
in a kayak,
25, 30-pound fish. And then all of a sudden my buddy Derek gets a 54-inch fish that, he did the circumference and times length or whatever the equation is. Yeah. And it came out to like 60 something pounds. It was an absolute monster. he caught that fish and I caught a 44 incher, and we held them next to each other, and the weight difference, just the girth of the two fish and the head size and everything was unbelievable. The difference.
Really?
So it's just, yeah, it's, I don't want to say it's a phenomenon to see one these days, but you get, if you get a 50-pound fish, fishing inshore, close to shore, rock piles, boulder fields, stuff like that, that's a fish of a lifetime.
What about, are you ever live baiting for them, Josh?
Very little. I will fish live eels at night throughout the summer.
Okay.
And then in the fall, I will fish live bunker. That's, that time of year, you just have big, huge schools of bunker right on the surface.
And just chunking bait.
And generally always bass underneath them.
Really?
And then it's just a snag and drop sort of a situation. They have put into effect a circle hook mandate.
Really?
Down the Striper Coast. So yeah, the way you used to do it, you'd throw a weighted snag hook out into the school of bunker.
Okay.
Snag one, let it swim until it got eaten. Well, now you have to snag one, reel it in as fast as you can before one grabs it, and then put it on a circle hook and then send it back out. It doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes they get eaten before you can get that bunker to the kayak, but what can you do?
It's so crazy. You guys, so everyone in chat tonight, if you're watching it on replay again, I just, so one of the things about Josh is because he's a striper guy, right? And then he does jigs too. And so when you put these things together, this is one of the things that like excites me. And I have on my list, like a bucket list. I can't even call it a bucket list. Like something that I want to have the opportunity to go and do and target is stripers on the East Coast. And I don't care. There's so many locations, and as they migrate up and down the coast, but I'm talking more northern states on the East Coast that I want to experience the striper experience. And you hear legends about places like Montauk and all these other, it's just long. I mean, there's so many amazing fisheries for striped bass or locations. And I just want to experience it. And I think maybe us is Jig Squad people and members, right, and part of this community, I think it's good for us to hear about these other type of fishing experiences and how they equate jig tying. So like, Josh, let me ask you a question. When you're making jigs, let's say you're making your own jigs, and maybe it's tying. Okay, let's start getting into it. If you're tying jigs, are you tying mostly for freshwater stuff, or will you tie for saltwater too? And if you're tying for saltwater, this is what I want to talk about, because everyone hears about freshwater a lot on Jig Squad. But if you're tying for saltwater, tell me what type of jigs are you trying to make when you're tying up jigs for saltwater?
So it's essentially it's always going to be something like this, a bucktail jig.
And that's like a bunker color right there.
Yep, exactly. So that's my peanut bunker bucktail.
And that's look at it's beautiful.
So it's got some saddle feathers in the middle, and then it's just olive and white with some some crystal flash in the bottom. It's probably the camera probably doesn't pick it up on the bottom, and then some gold flash on the top. That's a custom paint job on the heads.
Nice. Are you spraying or powder painting, Josh?
I spray them, yeah.
You're spraying them?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do like a yellow base coat, and then I do what do I do on the top? I can't remember. It's like I think it's like a bronze or something, and then I go over the whole thing with pearl. And that's essentially what you get. And that's literally just Sharpie marker for the spots.
Yeah. So. I mean, you know what's crazy, Josh? I've been talking about this for a while, that I have all the stuff for an airbrush now. And I just have, I bought a whole bunch of paints. I just haven't had time. I tell people I'm a high school educator and this is busy season, right? And I don't know when isn't busy season for me during the year, but nonetheless, it's something I'll spend more time on this summer. I really want to spray. It's not that I'm going exclusively to that, but you could just do some cool things. And so I've got the compressor. I got my gun. I have the paints. you know, I'm ready to go. I got some
Yep.
thinner. I have all the things. Now it's just time to play. And I that's why I appreciate that jig so much, because that jig, what was the weight on that? 3/4, half?
I think that one's a 3/4. Yeah, I usually do those in like 3/4 and 1 ounce.
3/4 and 1 ounce, which is a
Mhm.
standard. You guys, so for folks in chat, that if you're not a striper person, right? This is standard striper fishing on the East Coast, right? Whether off the beach, off the rocks, depending where it's at. Sometimes they'll even go lower, but depending on current, Hellabass, you know, we're talking jigs, my man. So, but the thing is, guys, listen, what I want to tell you is, if you're a freshwater person and you hear some of these things and you hear some of these weights sometimes, like Larry Hadley was on, and Larry Hadley has a lot of half, 3/4, 1 ounce jigs, mostly 3/4 and 1 ounce, right? That's pretty standard. The thing is, what I want you to remember is that you can take the fit and function of what some of those jigs are and apply them to your own applications and scale them down to 1/2 ounce, 3/8 ounce. That bunker jig, I'm telling you, you make a jig like that bunker jig that he held up, and you start playing around with some different colors. Now all of a sudden you're getting into Goby world and other things like that. And there's so many different things you could do. So good. Two questions. Let me check this one out first here, and I don't want to miss the next one. What lead melting pot do you recommend for first time pouring? I'm feeling like a cast iron spoon and a torch will work. All right. Or you think I should drop some money for a better setup? FXN, I'm going to tell you straight up, I do not believe in dropping more money to get nicer stuff when you're starting out. And some guys will say that differently. There's a lead I don't think you need to spend the $70 or whatever it is to get a Lee's production pot. That's standard what a lot of guys use. But they have, Do It Molds might have it. You could probably get it on Barlow's, Lure Parts Online. They have a little one that looks like it looks like a handle. And then it's got a small little cupped pot at the end of it that's a plug-in. And you literally, you heat the lead up in it and you pick it up and you pour the whole thing when you heat it up. I don't think there's anything wrong with using something like that. If you want to spend the bucks and it's $70, $80 maybe, a Lee production pot is the way to go. And if you want to message me, or if you're on, you can email me at jigsquadfishing@gmail.com, or you can message me on Instagram and I'll walk you through it. And you could get through it. It's like a ladle. Clint's saying there's a ladle that you can use out of any old standard pot, but there's one that's kind of like an all-in-one type of deal that I think is, and there's some recommendations in chat. But those are all good starting points for that recommendation. And we can always talk more about that too, bud. So Michael Bradley's saying, Josh, do you fish that? I think that's a peanut bunker. Do you fish that bare or with a trailer? Great question, Mike.
So if I was fishing this for stripers, I would fish it bare. If I was fishing it for fluke or summer flounder, I would probably put like a curly tail grub or like a gulp something or other on the back of that. A lot of guys buy these specifically for fluke and, fluke/summer flounder, whatever you call them. I don't know if you guys call them anything out in the Midwest.
Right. We call them what you call them, fluke and flounder.
But yeah, I got a couple guys that swear by these stupid things for fluke. So, but yeah, always with a gulp trailer or a Z-Man Dormatador Z or whatever it is, something like that on the back. Yeah.
Okay. Here's another one. Do you make any sand eel jigs? Good question too.
Sand eel. That's a great pattern. I mean, really, it's, olive over white, that's a sand eel essentially. I haven't really put any out there, but it's something I could make very easily. So
Josh, if you're making a sand eel jig, are you trying to get more length out of that profile of that jig, or
probably a narrower? Yeah, maybe a little sparser but longer, less of like a cone or belly shape, and then maybe even like a more of a narrow head too. Maybe just change up the head style a little bit just to make it look that much more like a sand eel. I know when the bass get on sand eels, they can be extremely particular. If it doesn't look like a sand eel, you're not catching fish. So
what about Josh, what about otter tails or cow strips? I've seen that mentioned a lot
too. I know a lot of guys, I'm not a huge, I don't know, probably putting my foot in my mouth by saying this. I'm not a huge bucktail guy when it comes to stripers. I'm more of a soft plastics and topwater and that kind of thing kind of guy. But yeah, I know a lot of guys that do the bucktails. They love the otter strips and, Uncle Josh pork rinds and stuff like that, if you can find them still. So,
and those are just some classic bucktail uses across the board. And like, it's funny. I hear some of the striper fishermen out in the West Coast, they'll talk about just curly tail grub styled trailers on a lot of what they use too. And I think everything's relative, like there's times I still to this day, like there's times that I'll fish a lot of things without a trailer and people think I'm crazy, but there are times I know how to, how I like to fish it. I don't always need a trailer to use it the way I want to. And it's not, like I said, I'm not saying this for saltwater. I'm saying this for freshwater too. There are a lot of times I'll throw things like chatterbaits and other jigs without a trailer and people think I'm crazy. But the thing is, I think certain designs of jigs are designed to do certain things. And
exactly.
And there's ways to accomplish that. It's not that I won't use a trailer, but I'll predominantly, and you guys, those that hear me say this all the time, I'll take off like a Zoom finesse worm and cut off a, 3-inch piece and I'll slide it on there and I'll just have that for just some type of profile. So it just all depends on what you want to do. I'm real big on, I want my jig to go where I want my jig to go. And I personally think, like, as an example, let's talk chatterbaits as an example. When you put boot-tailed swim baits on a chatterbait, what's going to happen? It's going to lift, right?
Yep.
And so when it lifts, it also means now if you want to keep it at a certain depth or you want to fish it through around wood, which a lot of people will say, you don't fish chatterbaits around wood. Well, you don't fish chatterbaits how I do sometimes. Sometimes I will fish them through certain types of wood if I know what the structure looks like. And I know that I want it at a depth and I literally want to run it right down a fallen tree, down the whole end of it. Well, it's a speed thing and it's about depth. And if I can't accomplish that with my trailer, then I don't want it on there. Yep. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And it's weird. And I say that, you guys keep in mind when I say that, I'm saying that is a true in the water wading river rat. And how I can meticulously move myself around and fish some structure like that. Look at fishing the 262. Andrew says, say no to boot tails. and then, so this has got to be somebody who knows you. Any kayak, right? He says, if you flip boot tail upside down, can have the opposite effect. That is very true. Yep. And Mr. Any Kayak, he just got done saying a little while ago he makes some killer freshwater jigs too.
Hi, Tom.
You know him. It's Tom. Tom, I'm just gonna call you Tom now because you're here. Hey, you guys, listen. While you're in chat, I always say I don't say this, and I have to remind myself to do it more because my entire goal is to create a better experience with more people involved in the Jig Squad experience, meaning in chat, what we talk about, whatever Jig Squad is, right? I want you to have a great experience, but part of that is, I want to grow our community too. And that means hit the subscribe button, hit the like if you enjoy the content. And this is stuff that you want to share with others, then share with other people you think that might be interested. But to me, sharing Josh tonight and his experience in the striped bass fishing was like a big, I was so excited about this, right? Because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to get another striper guy on, but Josh has got to be the one because he's laid back. He takes some great picks, cool fish, and some jigs. So besides that bunker jig and bucktail, are there other types of jigs that you're tying that you're using for the salt?
In the salt, so I don't tie a ton of them, but every now and then I'll have guys reach out and ask me for snap jigs, which basically is a smaller version of something like this.
Okay.
Less, a little bit sparser tie, and a lot lighter weight. So you're talking like half ounce or less. So, I mean, I've tied some for myself, like 1/4 and 3/8 ounce. I've had some other guys reach out, like, I want some 1/4 ounce ones for holdover stripers, stripers that spend the winter in the rivers.
Okay.
And it seems to be a really effective way to fish them. You're doing a lot of, it's just, really kind of ripping that jig, and letting it fall, ripping it, letting it fall. And, a lot of the time too, guys want a lighter wired hook.
Yes.
just to get that extra, that nice fluent motion and stuff. You're probably catching smaller fish generally doing that, but
Sure.
you could always luck into that, like, 25, 30 plus pound fish where it's just gonna, you're gonna have to loosen that drag up and just play them out,
Yeah. Hey,
so-
I got to show this. So you guys, see y'all. My buddy up in Wisco, Andrew, fishing the 262, goes, "Cooter, that mug." You guys see that? Now, this is not I didn't get that mug made. That's one of my stickers, you guys. It says "Set the hook." It's awesome, guys. Listen, if you want to, here's my thing. If you want to support Jig Squad, I'm not doing memberships. I'm not doing all these other things. I don't even think I can yet, technically. But the reality is, if you want to support Jig Squad, I have a 2-pack. I got stickers made. It's $8 shipped. It's a 2-pack. This is one, right? And you get both. You don't get the pick. I have about 10 other stickers. This is sticker pack number 1. I have about 10 other sticker packs already designed, and they're all killer. But until these are gone, I'm not putting the other ones out. So if you want stickers, message me on Instagram, or you can leave a message here with your email, and I can get in touch with you. I'll give you information. I sell them through Venmo or through my Zelle. So those are the 2 ways. It's $8 shipped. It's a way to pay for me to buy a new microphone and some new lights, but whatever. I took mine and I put it on my, on my water bottle. I have a Victory hooks on my water bottle. I like orange, but hey, listen, put your stickers wherever you want. Put them on your jig box if you like Jig Squad and buy a sticker pack. But that's my sale for tonight, guys. Josh, so I can't hold out. These people keep talking about freshwater. Right.
Yep.
And I think people like the striper stuff and it's cool. And we could talk more about that, but I want to hear about your thoughts on jig design for freshwater and what applications and what type of jigs you like to design.
Okay. So, I mean, for me, I'm of the opinion of just keep it simple, stupid. It doesn't have to be some crazy thing. Smallies generally, they're going to hit. You could tie a piece of yarn on a jig head and drop it down, and you could probably catch a smallmouth.
Like we're gar fishing.
But you know what? It's it comes down to confidence. So
that's a great comment.
For me, just a simple deer hair jig. It's a freshwater bucktail. I mean, this is my basic hair jig. It's nothing more than some deer hair tied to a 1/4 ounce head. These things kill it all winter long. Guys right now are buying them and going to Candlewood Lake and doing really well on the smallies there. I've got a buddy. I just saw him in the comments. My buddy Joe. He came out with me on the Connecticut River this winter, early December, and we had ourselves a day just using these. He caught his biggest ever on one of these that day, actually.
So it's so interesting you say that because depending on like the amount of material you use. So some of my friends may be in chat tonight. Frankly, I call people friends that have just been around the show for a while, right? So like not people that I know in person, but so I'd have real life friends that I've been fishing with for many years on Northern Illinois rivers that fish bucktails all winter long for walleye.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of got me going. I basically started trying to play around with bucktails, or I was using them for a long time because I'd use them in the salt, right? It might be the most classic jig of all time.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, I'm real intrigued by this smaller version of a bucktail now, right? 1/4 ounce, little shorter profile. Another guy out in the East Coast over there, and there's so many good designers, but Hollywood Hair Jigs.
Oh yeah, he makes great stuff.
They just that profile and that size. I love that. I love that, especially for smallies. And there's no reason why it can't work in lake systems as well. But they absolutely excel in river systems and current. Another level.
Yep.
And so talk about colors, right?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, black is clutch. I mean, I feel like you can throw black just about anywhere. Like an olive or a green pumpkin, something like that. Brown. I mean, I pretty much tie this jig in like 3 colors. I do on my website, I have black, brown, and then I have one called Girl Scout cookie, which I'm going to show you this one.
Yeah,
It's
I've seen this, and I want you got to hold this up because
so
for as simple as this thing
you know
is,
what? I do have one. I have
I
one that
think this is the slickest jig.
it's probably not gonna look so hot on the.
Let's
on
see
the
how
webcam.
it looks.
This one, it's got kind of a big neck. It's one that I was tying some jigs and I kind of screwed up the neck, so I just kept it for myself. But it's basically brown over olive. Lateral
Is the
line.
head black, Josh?
The head's green pumpkin.
Green pumpkin
And
head.
then it's got that like neon green thread. The neck's huge on it, but it'll catch fish.
You guys, listen, let me put this up so you see this too, because if you go, so here's Josh's site, okay, ctfishnerd.com. His guide services, you can reach him through there, but he also has all his jigs on there, and you could see that Girl Scout cookie. It's such a great name for a jig. There's lots of cool names that people come up with and stuff, but that one just seems so appropriate with that green mint color.
Yep.
The thread you used on that, and such a classic color. It's brown and black. I mean, it's so great. And you like that for the river systems. I could see it working tremendously well.
I think, it's depending on what the forage is, that can look like a number of things. It doesn't have to be a crayfish or a bait fish or a darter or, an alewife or whatever, I mean, that could be any number of things, especially if you're fishing deep, I think something, that green thread, I mean, it might just dull out down there, but they see that green thread and they go, that looks interesting. Haven't seen that before,
Yeah. It's funny because the only thing I can add to that, Josh, is there's a fly tire out there that I've seen his videos. I watch his videos. I just think he's a great tire. His name's Jesse Males, Males. And he, I think it's called Backwater Fly Fishing. Mm-hmm. And he lived down in Costa Rica for a while. He was down in Florida for a while. He might be back down in Costa Rica. But I was so impressed all the time because he was always tying with fluorescent and bright colored thread. But of course, he was making like shrimp patterns and all these crazy things for down in Costa Rica and stuff like that. Yep. But I bought a lot of thread of those colors, and I said, damn, one of these days I'm going to be able to use this. And I use it when I've made some things for saltwater, but I haven't used it for freshwater. And that the Girl Scout cookie or whatever you call it, that inspires me to play around with it a little bit more. So lately I keep having a couple of close friends that keep bringing up the concepts of, fishing with a chartreuse headed jig. Mm-hmm. And I throw a lot of stuff that's chartreuse. But the thing is, I haven't spent a ton of time fishing exclusively. I shouldn't say exclusively, but intermittently with a chartreuse headed jig. Mm-hmm. And so I just got done with a whole bunch of personal stash builds, or pours, I should say, for a trip to Mille Lacs that I'm going on in a couple of weeks. And I have I mapped it out. I had to make a list for myself. I go, how many chartreuse heads am I going to make? And it's the same concept as that fluorescent green or that green chartreuse, whatever color you want to call those things. I really want to make some unique things that have that kind of highlight spotlight color. And I just think chartreuse is phenomenal, and so like I see it the same way as that. Actually have a couple of jigs that I made up with green pumpkin marabou, and I used like a bright yellow thread. And I'm like, I don't know if it was a black head or green pumpkin. I'd have to go look, but I just playing around, you know, and I just think those highlight spots are kind of similar to guys talking about eyes. Maybe you're not an eye guy, but it's a spotlight or a feature. It's no different than like a shad spot.
Yep.
It's
a target. Right. I think about that too with like the stripers. I mean, I feel like that eye on that jig, I mean, that maybe seals the deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
They swim up, they don't see that eye. They go, I don't know what that is. I've never seen that before. They see that eye and they go, yep, herring.
Yeah, I mean, it's so amazing. It's so amazing what all the color talk, and then and then people will tell you that all these colors disappear underwater and they just become my own opinion is they just become gradients of, of how dark and how light,
Yep, just
and
shades, right?
shades thereof, right? And the
Yep,
thing is, the phenomenon of color is that it's a contrast, right? So like, how can I get a contrast against, so no matter what, that green, I don't know how much, but it's going to be a contrast against that brown and black,
yep,
any way you look at it. And the thing is, it becomes a secondary thing for a fish to focus on, I believe, because the first thing, like in a case like that with a small jig, is the profile, right? And all of a sudden it's just got that slightly thing that's a little bit different that is enough to make them make a decision on. So,
exactly.
I think playing around with all those things, and you said something earlier that I think is a tremendously important thing. It's confidence. If you have
Exactly.
confidence the jig's going to work, it's going to work.
Yep.
It really is, because you're going to be more focused and targeted on what you're doing, and how, and your the feel of your lure, how it feels on the bottom,
Exactly.
whatever you're doing.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. And so what else? Give me an idea what else you like making though. So mostly bucktails typically, right?
Yep. Do the bucktails, and then I do some marabous too. So got a couple different ones here. Um, I've got one that I call the Haribo hybrid, which
All right.
is
Let's see this
it's
one.
bucktail on the inside. It's a core of bucktail, and then I
Okay.
do marabou around.
Sure.
So this one I tied some rubber skirt material into as well. But so when you flare out the marabou, that's
Oh,
that's
beautiful.
your hair on the inside, and then your more fluid moving marabou on the outside. So you kind of get rigid profile, and also all that breathability of the marabou as well. Like
Yeah.
for me, like I don't love just a marabou jig for some reason. I don't know why. I just don't like it. Like you take it out of the
Okay.
water and it's like it looks just sad, It's like all matted
It
together,
does
and
look
you
sad
know,
sometimes,
uh,
doesn't it?
but you add a little bit of a deer hair in there. It's nice, rigid material, and then you got that supple marabou on the outside. You kind of get the best of both worlds, and it
Yeah.
glides a lot better too. That's the thing that I really like about these. You get a
Say
lot
that one more
better.
time, Josh.
What's that?
It rides better. What did you say?
It glides better.
Glides
So,
better.
like
I
when
got you.
you're like a lot of the time when I fish a hair jig, I sort of think about it like, I'm basically just sort of hovering that thing around on the bottom and just
Yes.
popping it every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
This will glide better than just a straight marabou jig. Marabou jigs, it doesn't have enough resistance. It's just going to crash to the bottom. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
can, play with the weight of the head, things like that, but
Sure.
like a 3/16 Haribo hybrid to me is like my go-to. Like, I mean, I could just fill my
Nice.
whole jig box with these and I'd be fine. Like,
See, it's so funny. So, like, those are the things that are super cool, like about how people approach it. So, like, the first thing for me is like, one, it helps create a little bit of, I'll call it bulk. You have the opportunity to create profile. How about
yep,
that? By
yep,
the bucktail underside, and then
hmm,
the marabou for a little bit more flow and action. And
yep,
so it's kind of like there's different reasons, people design jigs in different ways, and everyone's got a different approach to what they like to do. I kind of my friends kind of rubbed, like, what I'm tying right now. I'll be honest with you. I got into this whole thing lately where just life got busy, and I said I am not tying a lot of hybrid stuff. I'm just not interested in it right now. I have everything I need, right? So like I don't need anything right now. But when I go on a trip, I want to make new stuff, right? I want to have some cool stuff. I'll tell you, the trip I'm going on to Mille Lacs, you want to know what I'm most excited about right now? I have a whole bunch of ball head jigs with wire keepers that are unpainted. They're not painted for putting like plastic paddle tails on the back end and stuff. They're
yep,
unpainted. I am going to paint them, but they're just sitting there, and I go, look at how beautiful they are. They're just sitting there, nothing to them. They're
yep,
not painted. Anyone says, does it look, what does it look like? It looks like a little bit of flash, like a bait fish, no
hmm,
matter what. But I'm not tying on them. I'm going to use those for plastics, right? So
yep,
like I like having them sit there, and it's go, look at how beautiful they are. I don't have to do anything else to them. They're poured, they're done. You
yep.
know? And but I like pouring. Or excuse me, I like painting them if I'm tying. So will you ever, let me ask you this, Josh, will you ever Yeah, Gary says I like the name Haribo. Yep. Do you ever are you always airbrushing when you're making jigs, or are you doing for plain colors? Are you what's your process for that?
So plain colors, I will buy those pre-painted.
You buy them pre-painted, okay?
Yes, yeah. I don't pour. I generally don't paint. I do some custom colors on the VMC hooks, but
Okay.
I've got a couple different colors that I'll do for some different things, some pearls and things like that.
Okay.
But yeah, I usually buy. I mean, my stock is black, brown, and green pumpkin in 3 different sizes. So I'll do 1/8, 3/16, and quarter. So I buy them like that. It's the VMC Barbarian hook.
Okay.
Not going to tell you where I get them, but I'm sure there's guys that'll figure it out or already know.
I mean, if people are either going to find the hooks that they want, or they're going to pour their own, and whatever they decide to do. You know, the thing is, there's so many different opportunities to get hooks out there. Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, you don't have to pour jigs in order to craft jigs and be a jig designer. You know, you could buy pre-made jigs that are already painted. You could buy pre-made jigs. There's people all over on the forums, on the web, that you could get basically whatever the heck you want nowadays, and how you want them. And a lot of guys that, you know, are avid pourers. Like for me, I'll have friends ask me for jigs, and it's the one reason why I don't sell, because I'm like, I don't have time, and 2, when I do have time, it's for me. You know, like I want them to be about my stuff. You know, you're kind of in a different boat because you guide. You know what I mean?
Right.
So somebody comes out with you and they have a good experience and catch fish. They're like, hey, I want some of those.
Exactly.
You know, like, what do I need to do? Because now you just proved to them that they work.
Right. It's a double sale.
It's the confidence thing. Because I'm telling you right now, if I came out with you and I was catching fish and those were the jigs you had, and I make my own jigs, I'd say, I'm going to buy some of your jigs. Right. You know what I mean? So like, it's just, everyone wants something that works, and that, I was going to say affirmation, but you want to know, you want to have confidence that something you use works. And it's back to that confidence thing again. You know, there's so many different things I want to use and try. And the thing about jig design for me, Josh, is I feel like, and I bet you a lot of people in chat can say this too, you know, anyone that's playing around, or makes jigs, or even if you buy jigs, right? You always buy more than you can use, and you always make more than you can use, right?
Yep.
And so that's always been it. And I'm kind of like, I literally have way more stuff than I can use. So my goal recently was to say, I'm going to pour some jigs that is about practicality. I want to have some jigs that I can use when I'm using grubs on a river system, which I use a lot. I want to have swim baits with a wire keeper, which I made. And then the rest is all for flash and show when I want to make like a flipping jig or some type of silicone skirted jig or whatever it is. And then I had certain jigs that I poured. My recent batch, I went back and forth. I just recently changed the thread that I'm using, which was a big change for me. I was a big 210 denier guy, and I just recently changed to 6/0, which is basically, I don't know the number. Is it Brian Schmitz in chat? Somebody's going to know 6/0. It's either 120 or 140, maybe 140 denier. But I just recently switched to 6/0, and I absolutely love it. At less bulk. And so like, if I'm able to work with materials a little bit better, and my tying's improved a little bit because of it. So I'm trying to learn. But like, I'm making stuff for me right now, and I'm trying to keep it simple. I'm painting heads 3 different colors. If I'm using them for swim baits or whatever it is, white, green pumpkin, and God, I didn't paint black. What did I do? White. I did white, green pumpkin. Oh, and I poured a few chartreuse heads, but that was it. I said, I want to keep it simple. What am I going to do? White, green pumpkin. And just because now I feel I'm covered. If I want to try some different colored heads, I'm done. So yeah. So the 6/0 is about 140, but I mean, I guess everyone has different thread that they use. What about you, Josh? What do you prefer to tie with thread-wise?
I mean, I'm not too picky about it.
Okay.
I was actually getting some stuff at Walmart that was pretty good. It was super thin synthetic.
Mm-hmm.
I ran out and they have not restocked in like 6 months. So I've just been like trying different stuff. The local bait shop that I used to get materials from just closed like a month ago. They closed down for good. Somebody, I think, bought them out.
Okay.
Shop will remain nameless.
Okay.
If there's anybody local on here, they know exactly what I'm talking about. But I've been playing around with some different stuff. The stuff I did my last couple batches with, it's kind of thick, but if I just do less wraps, it works. So
yeah, I get you. And you
make it
learned
happen,
to tie. So here's a question for you. So Tom says, is paint as durable as powder? Which is a good question. So like if you're airbrushing or painting, what do you do for like a finish coat? That's a good question.
I'll epoxy coat them.
Okay.
It is okay. I would say the powder is more durable. I mean, I don't know. I've had powder fail too, though, so I don't know.
Sure. Same.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of powder painting. I don't know. I like doing the air, the airbrush, and I'll even use, believe it or not, nail polish sometimes and just epoxy that, and that holds up. That actually holds up really well. And there's
shockingly well.
Some really good colors too.
So guys, listen, here's another tip. I'm big on like little tips. It seems like the latest one that's going around all the time in my tip. I'll stick to paint and I'll get to one later, and it's about the heat shrink tubes. I want to talk about that a little bit later so people hear me say it, but because I keep saying, and now I'm seeing it pop up in videos, and I want to make sure I give credit to where I got it from and then talk about it a little bit more. But so one of the things that I started doing, and follow me on this one here because it's about as easy. It's a classic river rat thing. And I did this years ago and I stopped doing it. And I would paint ball head jigs and I would throw 3-inch twister tails on the river all the time. And I would throw 2 colored twister tails. I'd throw black and I'd throw white. And I'd have chartreuse in the bag, but I would throw headwise. I would have black, white, and my own custom green pumpkin. That's what I would have. And then, of course, I'd throw like other little river baits and stuff like that, like 8-ounce buzz baits and all types of cool stuff for smallies. But the reason I'm saying this is because one of the things I used to do is when the jigs, those colored heads would get knocked up, right? I used to use eagle claw hooks way back in the day, and I loved them because I could bend the hook out. Like if I got snagged and I didn't have to go wade in and get messed up, right? And I just bend the hook back and I keep fishing. If you set your drag right, there's absolutely no reason a hook should ever bend out on you in freshwater. There is no reason ever. You're either using braid, your drag's too tight. I'll save that for another day, but that is me, right? And so what I started doing, I said, you know what? When I want to doctor these jigs up and I don't want to get rid of them, I'd file them down. It was like an economical thing. Like I tried to figure out how economical I could be as a fisherman. And I would get white nail polish and I would get some type of green or brown nail polish and mix it together to make like a green pumpkin. Yeah. And I literally would paint the heads back if they would chip up ever in time. And after I painted them with the nail polish, they never chipped. They didn't chip anymore. And so I'm like, shit, why don't I just stick to painting with nail polish, for crying out loud? We have all this fancy stuff. And yeah, look at, so Lime Green Fishing Machine says, he goes, Sally Hansen needs to start getting into the fishing industry. I wholeheartedly agree. Sally Hansen's is the real deal. And like,
that stuff's great, man.
I've even told people, I go, listen, there's times where I paint jigs and everyone bakes them. And I even tell people, I go, sometimes I powder paint jigs and that's it. I hold them back over the flame and I let them go. Yeah. And if I need to touch them up later, I will. If I'm wading the river, I don't need fancy. But if I'm making jigs and tying, I want to jazz them up and make them a little nicer. Mm. But the other thing I'll do is I'll take the Sally Hansen's, the clear, and I literally will slather it all over the head when I'm done painting it. And that's it. And it's the same thing as the rest of the nail polish, but or yeah, look at, so Tom says, he goes, or if you hook a large pike. If I hook a large pike, I've got a problem. But yeah, Brian's saying they're killer in streams, right? So, it's just, I don't know. I feel like I'm in one of these simple modes right now. Like I'm really excited to throw hair. when I go up to Mille Lacs. And actually, I'm going to be after Mille Lacs. I'm going to be home for a few days, and then I'll be up in Door County. So I'm really excited to do some fishing because I haven't done a lot this year, and I've made some jigs. I've been focusing on Jigsquad and just getting my getting my life organized. But so when you're in the rivers, are you always in your kayak typically, Josh?
Generally, yeah. I mean, there's a couple sections of one of the rivers I fish where you can wet wade for miles. I mean, you can get in and you're in, say, ankle to knee deep water for literally miles.
Wow.
Fishing smallies. It's a blast.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, generally the kayak. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
It's and so what would you say for your guide service, Josh? Would you say you do more guiding in freshwater than the saltwater for the stripers, or the other way
more
around?
saltwater than fresh. Yeah, I would say 85% of my business is saltwater, chasing stripers, maybe some blackfish, some albies.
All right. Now you said it. Now I got to ask. All right. So tell me, all I know is I watch videos of guys fishing for albies, and it's like a scream fest. And what I mean by that, take your classic bass medium action spinning rod, right? Maybe I'm wrong on rod size, right? And you're casting typically jigging type spoons, right? Or all kinds of things, actually, like a jig and fly, all types of stuff. Epoxy jigs, right? Epoxy 1 ounce or just under, like the hoagies and stuff like that.
See if I have one sitting here. I don't think I do, but yeah,
guys, these
not
things
much
are like
to it. It's just a bait fish shaped jig about this big, and just they come with a treble hook. I put a single inline hook on the back though.
Inline hook.
Yeah, an inline single. Yeah,
not a circle, huh?
Nope.
Okay. Explain this to me, because the freshwater guys don't understand this as much of why these trebles come off and these hooks get put on.
Yep.
It hasn't carried over to freshwater.
It's a conservation thing. For stripers,
okay,
the idea is to do the least amount of damage to that fish as possible.
Right. Okay.
Like if I'm gonna, so like this is a 5/0. This is big. I mean, that's something I would put on a plug, for stripers.
Yes. Okay.
So I would, certain plugs. I mean, I don't do it with all of them, but certain ones I will take the tail treble off and put one of these in place of it, and then I'll crush the barbs on the treble that I leave on the belly.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of trying not to hurt the fish. The population is in such trouble right now that, I mean, there's guys like me that guide, and we tell our clients, you know what, you catch a fish in the slot size, it's going back. I don't care. That
right.
Fish is 100% catch and release. Wow. There's no, just try to do as little damage as possible. But with the epoxy jigs, the idea is that, I mean, I feel like, I don't have any on hand.
I'm really glad this came up because I'm excited to talk about this.
The treble that comes on an epoxy jig, it's a pretty small treble, and it has a very, it's a small gap.
Yes.
So in my eyes, you put something smaller than this, obviously you'd use a 2 or a 3/0, but you have a bigger gap and it's just a single hook. And I mean, this thing, you put your hand on this and go up with it, it's, that's grabbing. You know what I mean?
Right.
No matter what, if that fish gets that in its mouth, it's going to find something to hook into. So,
yeah. And I'll tell you, my only reference point, like I've seen this for so long, of using the single hooks, but when I fish in the saltwater, I really have experienced that with the trebles, right? How it changes so much. And these fish are just so much more, muscular and they're thrashing. It's just, they get destroyed from the trebles. So I understand it. And there's a lot of guys in freshwater that have switched over to the techniques a little bit too. I personally haven't. It's not that I wouldn't do it. It's just the whole concept of, I don't know. I've always viewed it as a saltwater thing, and I haven't. Do you switch over for the freshwater too? The singles?
Not typically, no, but I mean,
Okay.
I don't fish a ton of stuff with trebles in freshwater for whatever reason. I'm a single hook guy. I don't know.
Gotcha.
It's just for me, it's I don't know. Like I don't fish a ton of hard baits, a ton of top waters. I mean, if I'm fishing top water, it's probably a buzz bait or a frog,
Gotcha.
something like that. Occasionally I'll do like, some small spook baits for smallies and
Mm-hmm.
poppers and stuff, but no, typically it's more single hook stuff.
Josh, here's a question from Clint. He's asking, so when you do your guiding, do you supply the kayak? That's
Oh,
a great question
absolutely.
because I guess I
Absolutely.
didn't know that either.
That's like the number one question I get. It's either that or will I fall out or flip the kayak?
Possibly both. Do you supply the kayak, and how often will I fall out?
But yes, no, I have 3 Hobie Outbacks, so I can take up to 2 people as I'm set up, and then I've had people contact me that say, well, I've got a Hobie and I want 2 friends to come, and I say, okay, well, if you want to bring yours and your 2 friends can come, everybody's in a kayak, we're fishing. So
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Clint followed up with that. He's saying, that opens up fishing for a lot of folks. It's so cool. So, talk about Albies. So, like, guys, so listen, everyone in chat. So, here's my fascination with Albies. So, they'll use, and by the way, I just want to throw this out there because it's not in stock right now, so I don't mind saying it. But Do It Molds has a profiled spoon that is almost the exact same size as like the 11/16 ounce hoagies, the epoxy jigs that they throw. And there are guys that are using that same size styled spoons in 1/2, 3/8 ounce that absolutely crush walleye on the Great Lakes. And so all I'm telling you is that those profile jigs are for more than just, the saltwater. But
absolutely.
all I know is there's a mold for it. And when it's in stock, I cannot wait to start messing around with it. And that's when I think my airbrush is going to get some use, because I know I can airbrush it and then epoxy finish the thing. And that's basically what these epoxy jigs that everyone's throwing are. They're either, maybe they're not all lead, maybe there are other types. But the point is, all I know is Jigsquad is going to be making some of these, and I can't wait. It's just a matter of time. Do It Molds, when that mold comes in, I need it. And I'm excited about it. But here, we mentioned Albies. I watch videos of guys catching Albies on, let's just call it a 7-foot medium bass rod styled rod, maybe a little bit bigger. I don't think medium heavy people are using. They're medium 7-8 foot rods, whatever it is. And all I know, these things are screamers. Their first runs, it looks like somebody's going to get spooled once or twice. On how big of a fish, Josh? Something that looks like a 3.5 pound, a 4-pound bass.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've caught them up to like maybe 10 pounds, but
okay,
I mean,
so that's a big Albie.
Fish is probably 4 to 6 pounds. Yeah, probably like 6 pounds, maybe 7, something like that.
Okay, that's a beast.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, they're all muscle. I mean, when you finally land that fish and you get it in your hands, I mean, it is rock solid from head to tail. That the tail is like bone. It's unbelievable.
It's a little tuna, and it goes.
Yep.
And that, though, it's like a torpedo. I mean, tuna is shaped like a torpedo.
Very hydrodynamic.
And like the little tunnies, man, they are.
It's just a blast.
So when I hear things like stripers and Albie fishing, and the Albie season is typically when, Josh, in the fall?
So yeah, it starts in September. It can go through November, depending on how heavy they come in, where they end up. They're one of those fish that will be here today, gone tomorrow. Should have been here yesterday, kind of fishing. So yeah, you could smash them one day, or you see them, I'm going to go back there the next day. You talk to your buddy who was, 12 miles this way in the sound. He's like, oh yeah, they were over here today. It's just, oh God.
What are you throwing for Albies? Are you throwing jigs at them with plastics?
Mainly the epoxy jigs, Albie snacks, which
I know Albie snacks. It's like a straight tailed chunk of plastic, like a little fat bodied. I know them. I see them on that
kind of like a jerk shad, but it's got a lot of weight to it, so you can cast these really well. And then you just rig it with like a 5/0, screw lock hook.
Guys rave about those things, and
Yeah.
those things don't they come like 20 to a pack or something like that, or
I think
it's a
you can
decent
get
deal.
bulk packs, but I think the way they normally sell them, it's like 6 to a pack or something.
6 to a pack. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think stuff like that would work in freshwater too.
Oh
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
I've caught smallmouth in the Connecticut River on these for sure.
That's crazy, man.
Yep.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And
Yep.
so what else? There was something else I was going to ask you about jigs. So you sell jigs on your site, Josh?
I do. However, right now I have my inventory zeroed out just because I'm getting real busy with guiding. I've got a lot of trips coming up, and it's hard for me to stop everything just to tie like a $25 order or something.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
if guys are interested, like I have stock. I don't have everything right now just because I'm sort of at the end of my tying season. I pretty much do it through the winter just as like supplemental income. I mean, I love doing it. But it gets to a point in the spring where I'm like, all right, I kind of have to like tone back and just focus on guiding because that's how I make my money. So,
Sure.
but yeah, no, if guys want to, hit me up on Instagram or anything, Facebook, and say, hey, need some green pumpkin, need some black, whatever. Absolutely reach out to me. But yeah, for right now, the website inventory is zeroed out. If I have some time this summer, I'm probably going to tie up maybe some small batch stuff, just some funky stuff, just to sort of like blow through some material.
Nice.
And yeah, sort of go from there. And then, in the fall, I'll be fully restocked. I'll be back to tying, I'll be at my bench 6-8 hours a day again. So,
and that's pretty typical for most jig makers. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yep.
the season to
Yep.
do these things. And what's funny about that, Josh? Like I feel like I'm the opposite of some people. Like I spend the winter like if I don't have like the jigs poured already for the winter, I don't like going out in my garage in Chicago and
Oh God.
and pouring. So like I try and stock up in the fall for what I'll need. And I actually, to be honest with you, temp wise, like I literally can go out and still pour in the garage and it'd be pretty warm in December even. So there's not a long time that I can't do it, but I feel like I hibernate a little bit and start generating ideas. And funny enough, like I do like this little period of time right now. So being in education, it's a busy time of year, right? And so like once school gets out, that's my time. And so I get to spend time with my wife, my boys, fish, go on some cool trips. And so like this is the build up to that for me. And so like I feel I'm reversed sometimes where I tend to like making things in the summer and screwing around and fishing. Cause I mean, on my end, it's like I can't go all the time. It starts to become a little bit more about bigger trips and stuff. And it doesn't matter. I mean, Jig Squad's been a new way for me to really, connect and just talk about, making jigs and hanging out. And I don't know, it's a good thing. Like somebody had asked me, they said, like, I don't know. I think sometimes people think it's all about a big rush and a grab to go on to a next level. I'll tell you something. You see him in chat, Josh, Brian Schmidt, right? He's been in here, and Brian, I had him on a couple months back. But I'll tell you what, Brian Schmidt, you guys, I don't know if I've said this before on the show. Brian Schmidt, before I even had him on the show, gave me some of the best advice that I took to heart of anything else I've heard. And I remember at the beginning, he said, you know what, Mike? He says, as you go through this, he goes, make sure your work is genuine and make sure it just, you're not just, you're not just passing it off as another show. And I'm not knocking other people. There's some of my friends that have cool shows are in chat, right? I'm just saying, they said, make it genuine. And like they said, they're like, you might have a hard time getting jig makers that you want to have on your show in time. And, so you might want to consider how often you want to do it. Well, as luck would have it, I realized I had a goal for myself that I wanted to get through almost 3 months of shows every week. And I did. And then I went and I switched it to every other week. And, some of the growth for Jig Squad slowed down a little bit, but I don't care. That wasn't about it. It was about my own sanity and having good experiences and bringing on people like you to talk about different things. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I'm not selling anyone a bill of nothing around this place. It's just kind of like, I like talking cool stuff, you know, and learning from different people. Like you got me going because you know what I have in my head tonight, Josh? It's that small little bucktail.
Yeah.
You know, like I have it in my head. I'm
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, those and just the amount of material you have. Like my walleye guys, my walleye buddies always tie it with a little bit more. It'll have like a little bit more length to it. Usually like a tear. I don't want to call it a teardrop, like a button top head and some different profiles, but just that shorter, stubbier style for like smallies.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
I'm really jonesed on. I might even, to be honest with you, I might even make a couple of your hariboos and bring them with me up to Mille Lacs and play around with those.
Try them out. Yeah,
Yeah, I
definitely.
mean, I like how you described it. And Clint Gordon's asking me, is Eric fishing another tournament? I'm not sure. Eric fishes during the fishing season. I'm really sure I'll decide. I actually think he is fishing a tournament this weekend. So good luck to Eric. But I do think he is fishing. So Josh, tell me this, buddy. Tell me what excites you about, you know, you're in the middle of your season. So obviously being out with clients and fishing or yourself and just having a good time is all part of it. And making clients smile. But what are some things you see that you want to dive into for design stuff come, let's say, the fall or next winter? Do you have ideas in your head of any new things yet? What do you think?
Yeah, I got some ideas for some different stuff.
Okay.
You know, I'm probably gonna just stick to the bread and butter. You know, we'll do the basic hair jigs, we'll do the hariboos. You know, last fall I did a little run of I did some underspins, I did some Ned rig jigs, you know, some different stuff like that. So I'm always playing around with stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they got all this stuff here. Like I got piles of material and jig heads. I've got, you know, several different styles, and it's just
Sure.
like, you know, the sky's the limit, you know. I mean, there's no
Right.
wrong, you know, it's all gonna catch fish somewhere. So
How many years, Josh, have you been guiding for?
so I've been doing it like full time for just about 2 years. But I was doing it on the side as when I was doing contracting work, painting and carpentry and stuff. I was
Sure.
doing it on the side for, I don't know, maybe a couple years as well. So combined all in probably like 5-6 years. But you know, that was before the Hobie days. So that was in paddle kayaks. That was, you know, didn't have quite the same draw as I do now that I'm in pedal driven
You
kayaks where you're
wouldn't.
not doing this, you know.
I'm telling you something. I almost want to come out there and experience this that close to the water. Like, when's the season? Tell me this. So, when are the two ideal times? Like, to me, and I could be wrong, but so correct me. I believe like there's a spring and then there's a fall run,
Right.
right? So, when are the times? Talk to me about seasons a little bit because I would
Okay.
love to come out to the East Coast. I mean, for me from Chicago, I could be out there and I think it's a 13, 14-hour ride.
Yep.
You know, like I would want, I could see myself wanting to come and do this.
Yep.
Right. Tell me seasons. Like when are the times to go?
So
What can somebody expect?
fish start showing up in late April. We start seeing fresh migratory fish in April. They're on the smaller side. If you get 30 to 32 inch fish end of April, early May, you're you're doing good.
Okay.
May, you start seeing a little bit bigger fish coming in gradually, and then into June. June is pretty much when any fish that sort of decided it wanted to come into Long Island Sound, it's done it already.
And
So
stayed or there and
oh yeah,
gone.
yep, nope, they stay.
Really?
You know, they'll move around a lot. I mean, you know, they'll move with the tides, with the bait, everything. There's so much structure and different things for them to just gravitate to. You know, different rips and all these different things. But in the summer, you know, summertime, you know, spring, we do a lot of, you know, low light into daytime fishing. You know, evening into darkness.
Okay.
And then in the summer, things really switch over to like a nighttime bite.
Okay.
The water's warmer. These
So
fish
in
are
June,
going out a little deeper.
so if Cuda gets out of school and
Hmm.
I'm coming out there to go striper fishing, and let's say it's the second week of June.
Yep.
When are we typically going out? What time we're going out for the evening?
You could do a morning or an evening, yeah. And it's going to be mainly top water, soft plastics, either top water or subsurface. And then if you stay out till after dark, maybe sling some eels as well.
Oh my gosh!
And end up with maybe even a bigger fish. So,
what type of rod are you using for this?
So
give
I
me an
mean,
example.
my personal setup, I have a 7'6" St. Croix Mojo inshore, medium heavy. And then I've got it paired with a Penn Slammer 3 4500.
4500. Okay.
Yeah, so not like huge, but it's got some beef to it.
And talk about line a little bit. So like on that setup on that Slammer 3, what are you throwing on there?
30-pound Power Pro Super Slick V2.
Okay. I actually like that line for freshwater.
Yeah,
what it's worth.
Yeah. I love the Power Pro stuff. Freshwater, I'll play around with line a little more, but when it comes to saltwater, I'm pretty much Power Pro through and through.
I'll tell you what, I actually, when I went down to Florida, I put 30 on, and I had one rod spooled up with 20 and to go on a little less, but I did have 30 on because I had already had it on there from when we were like in South Carolina. But I like 30-pound as a main line, and and 20. I don't know if I fish stripers with 20, but I'm interested to hear that you're saying you're fishing 30-pound as a main line. And then what about leader? What are you doing?
So this time of year I'm doing like 30. Only really, I mean, I don't know. You can run into some pretty finicky fish, especially in the Connecticut River. Those fish get a little pressured. And depending on water clarity, 30 to 50. But when I'm fishing around boulders, 50 or 60. Because
50 or 60.
The way I fish, the way a lot of us fish out of the kayaks, we almost call it reverse surf casting. So instead of standing on the rocks and casting out, you're looking at the rocks, casting at them.
I got you.
So you've got a lot of you've got a boulder laden shoreline, and then you've got big boulders kind of positioned here, there, and everywhere out away from it. And those stripers, when you hook one, they know where they are and where they can break you off. So they will run to the nearest rock and just try to get under it, next to it, down in between. And you'll if you get your leader rubbing on the rock, that's one thing. But when they start rubbing your main line on the rock, you're toast.
It's crazy because that reminds me, I have a buddy down in Florida, like the Fort Myers area, and they call it gorilla fishing. And what they do is, and they're fishing for big snook in the docks at night.
Oh, okay.
And so that same type of concept makes me think of that. Where like you got to get that sucker out. And so line on your leader line, are you doing a top shot or are you doing like a number of feet of leader?
I'll pretty much. I usually like, just to keep it simple, I mean, I'll just do a double uni knot to a 4-foot leader.
You're my kind of guy. I like that.
Yeah, I don't love the top shot. I don't have the patience for FG knots and everything else. Like,
and I'm going to tell you something. Anyone out there with anything, when you get to that size of line, anyone that tells me an FG knot will go through your guides, it'll go through, but I'll hear it every single time. And every single time I'm thinking about, I just lost 15 feet off my cast. Or you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
and that's why I think it's garbage. And okay, so here's the next question. Are you using mono leaders or using fluorocarbon?
Fluoro. Yep.
Really? And you see, now the only thing I'll say, and like, here's the guy from Chicago saying this, I'll use a mono leader.
Yeah.
Like in the salt. I don't know. I'm not sold on the fluorocarbon. I'm not. I believe in it for certain applications, but saltwater isn't one of them. I'm just being honest, Well, tell me why. Tell me why you're and I know most people are using fluoro. That's just what it is. But tell me why.
I will use mono in a pinch. And some guys actually, if you're using a heavier setup and you're casting plugs with trebles, you don't have that flex and you don't have that softer tip on your rod. It's definitely easier to pull the hooks.
What if you're chunking bunker?
Yep. That I would probably use mono. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I don't have the experience of all this, but I know enough to at least have this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't
it's
know.
good.
It's just, I mean, fluoro's always kind of just been the thing, you know,
I get it.
low
I get
stretch,
it.
abrasion resistance, and just the invisibility of it. You know, I mean, Long Island Sound water is not the clearest always, but the further east you go, the clearer. I mean, sometimes it is gin clear, and I mean, you know,
Yeah.
fluoro could make the difference. So
Yeah, you are right. And that is true. And it's just about application, what you want to do, right? So like I'll as an example, like for freshwater, there's a lot of times that on my spinning rod, I'll put mono on purposely for throwing swim baits.
hmm
I just do, I don't need the sensitivity of bottom contact. I will say this, you're fishing something on the bottom. It is nice having fluoro for the feel of a
right,
jig on the bottom. Like
right,
it's hard to be beat. Like, especially like I'm an old school love fishing a tube for smallies on lake systems. River systems, not as much. I will, but on lake systems, I'm big. I'm big on tubes,
yep,
and that bottom contact is extremely important to me, right? So
absolutely. Got to
it's just
feel what's
lots of
down there.
when you're fishing. Here's one of the last things I want to make sure I ask you about. When you're fishing the Haribo style jigs,
hmm
tell me how you're fishing that. Are you fishing on the bottom? Are you bouncing it? Are you yo-yoing it through? What are you doing when you're fishing that Haribo jig?
I'll do a number of different things. I mean, a lot of the time, yeah, I'm just sort of hovering it over the bottom. Sometimes I'll bounce it. A lot of the time, like especially in the winter, you know, we get on like sort of like a dead stick bite.
Yes.
There's one
Yes.
spot where, you know, if you see like the water is like 38, 39 degrees, I mean, those fish are not moving a whole lot.
Right. You just gotta let it sit. Yeah.
So
And the
you
the
basically let it
walleye are
sit,
like that, bro,
or
sometimes.
the thing I like to do in the kayak is, you know, if whatever way the wind is facing, I don't care what way it's facing,
Mm-hmm.
point the bow of the kayak into the wind, cast upwind, drop it to the bottom, take like one crank, and just let the wind do the work. Almost like
Yeah.
float and fly without the float.
I get you.
You're basically just dead stick drifting it, and I mean that is so effective. Um,
And a lot of times on that style jig, you're throwing what, quarter ounce?
Quarter, 3/16 or eighth, yeah.
Or yeah, you did say that size
Three
that you have.
sixteenth is sort of my niche. Like I just like the way it feels on the setup I use it on, and the weight
Sure.
line. Like I use 10-pound braid, either an 8 or 12 pound leader, and then it's like a medium setup with a little 2500 series reel.
Yep.
You know, I'm just dialed in on that 3/16. But if it gets, you know, if it gets windy, you know, or I'm fishing deeper, I'll go up to quarter ounce. You know, I've got buddies that, you know, they swear by the quarter ounce. They just like the way that feels. So I think it all just comes down to what your preference is and like the way you fish it and how it feels on the end of the line, really.
Yeah, it is true. And like, funny enough, like for like if I'm fishing grub on a river system, which is probably one of my favorite things in the world to fish, and I'm not talking just like straight retrieves. I really like, I'll go back and forth, and I'm talking in current. Like
Yep.
I cut my teeth wade in rivers, right? So like it's in current, and I used to fish 16th and 8th ounce. Those were my bread and butters.
Yep.
And I got so good at feeling things in current and learning how to work things through eddies, or on the edge of eddies, or on the top sides of eddies, or the bottom sides and the blowouts. And like it's just, I'm a river rat, like, so that's how I learned to do it. But it's
Yep.
funny when I get in a boat with some of my buddies. I mean, I'm throwing 3/16 and quarter. Everything
Right.
changes. It's so
Right.
bizarre because
Exactly.
you're typically, and I guess that's similar in a kayak because you're able to set up
Yep.
on structure or on the eddy or the current seam or rip that you want to fish. You're setting up on it. So when you're casting, so everything changes. And now all of a sudden 3/16 a quarter, and that becomes a typical thing that we'll use. And it's just so weird to me because like if I'm not in a boat in a river system, a smaller river system, well, decent size enough where I'm throwing 8th and 16th ounce. And it's just so weird to me how I differentiate these things depending on the application and how I'm fishing.
It's all about making those adjustments, you know?
It is. And it's funny because if you get me on the Great Lakes, there's certain things that I will, there's certain baits, like as an example, a tube. There's a lot of guys on the Great Lakes that'll fish a tube on a spinning rod. I won't fish a tube on a spinning rod. It's weird to me, and I don't know why, but I will tell you, I'm usually fishing 5/16 or 3/8 ounce on tubes because I use them in very specific applications, right? And but then a lot of guys that are throwing quarter ounce or 3/16 ounce or lighter tube jigs, they're throwing them on spinning rods, and to me that's like crazy. If I'm going that light, I'm not using a tube anymore. That's just me. And it's just funny. Look at Brian Schmidt saying, he goes, that's rod tip sensitivity also. Yeah, it is true, Brian. And I think for me, funny enough, one of the things is I've never been one to spend a ton of money on rods. It's just how I was. I was a river rat, like we learn to use and understand the tools we had. And I hate to say it, it's probably partly why I make the comments I do about using monofilament and things like that. Like I've learned to use different things in different ways. But I will say this: saltwater has made me a better angler. Fishing the Great Lakes for smallmouth I have different applications I use for that, but it's just interesting hearing these different styles, right? I want to try and take some of the things you talked about with the saltwater stuff and apply it to things we do on the Great Lakes for deeper watered fish.
There's so much crossover between salt and fresh too. And I mean, it's funny. Like I've been writing for On the Water magazine past couple months. I write the monthly fishing planner for Eastern Connecticut. And the last one I wrote, I was talking about how I took a trip, and the night before I was striper fishing, and I figured, you know what, I'm gonna striper fish in the morning. And then maybe, if the sun comes out and sun gets too high, the bite shuts off, I'll go bass, I'll go largemouth fishing or something. So, lo and behold, I forgot to put the largemouth stuff in the car. I had only striper stuff. I get to the lake and I'm like, all right, well, I have like my plug bag and some plastics. I don't know. I'll see what I can do. Right. Yeah. So it's, luckily it was a lake that at one point had a really nice population of landlocked alewife. It's not a huge lake either, but I mean, I've seen some of those alewife get coughed up, and I mean, they're 7-8 inches long. So I'm like, I could be all right here with what I got. So, I had a small spook style plug and some Magnum Zoom flukes, and just like, see what happens. And I ended up having an awesome day. So it's just, it's amazing the crossover, I mean, guys, we'll look at something and go, that's only for this fish, or that's only, it's for fish. It's for fishing. Just fish it.
Yeah. I mean, you said it earlier, and it's not that I haven't been part of the same conversation so many different times before, talking about confidence in a bait. But, as I'm kind of we're talking about this, about line and different things that we use. You guys, I'm going to be honest with you, for a long time, like I said to myself, I'm like, there's certain things I want to talk about with making jigs, and there's still so much more that I haven't even shared, right? Of different ideas and thoughts on things. And that'll all come out at the right times, right? But I know my stuff. And the funny thing is, like, I honestly asked myself when I was starting Jigsquad, I go, I wonder if there's gonna be people that kind of turn their nose sometimes when they hear about, what I think about different rods and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't care. I said, I'm too old to care what people think anymore, And I say that because I honestly think, and there's a lot of guys out there. I remember Hellabass talking about this one time. He puts videos out on YouTube and does a live show too. I remember Hellabass was talking about one time about how he learned to fish certain things and certain techniques. And I remember seeing him saying this a long time ago, and it kind of stuck with me because I kind of laughed, because I'm like, well, that's me. Like to me, it was like a soul search, learning how to fish a river. And it's crazy. You go get in a river with current the first time, and when I mean, it's a learning experience. Like, you really have to you build up confidence in what you do, and you start learning how to read water.
Yep.
And And I think the things you gain from that, and then learning how to use the tools you have, the rods you have, depending on how fast of an action it is, and all those things, and learning how to adjust your positioning and how you hold it. Like, that was me. And funny enough, there's a lot of rods I use that, like, you guys, I'm telling you, I used to use the Bass Pro Shop Extreme rods, and I still use them. I still have them. They don't even make them anymore, right? I use some of the Mojo Bass rod stuff now. And I cherry pick rods that I think are really good fit and functional rods, you know. And I'm going to tell you something. I just all want you to hear me say this. I want you to know that I caught countless snook, snapper, and a tarpon on a $40 Bass Pro Shop rod down in Florida this summer. And I love the rod so much. I have about six of them for freshwater now from super fast action, and they just stopped making it. The Bass Pro Shop's Graphite Series rod. It's a blue rod, and I got turned on to this rod, Josh. No joke. I saw a video of somebody fishing saltwater, and I looked and I saw the rod. I go, what rod is that guy fishing with? And I looked it up, and he's catching like jacks and stuff. I go, no way. It's a $40 Bass Pro Shop rod, and they just stopped making it. But it's a fast action. It's a phenomenal rod, and I love it. And I bought it. I use it for drop shotting. I use it for river rods. I use it for everything now. And it's just, you got to be economical. I have a family. I got 3 boys, right? Absolutely. What else am I going to do? Yep. But, you know, it's just, I appreciate you talking about some of those things, because it's like, you know, you keep it simple sometimes, and you have to use the things that work. You want to put your clients on fish.
Exactly.
You know, and are you ever using, Josh, plastics on jig heads on their own? Talking about freshwater. If you're fishing the rivers, what do you like to use plastics wise, bait wise?
So, I mean, I fish a lot of different stuff. I do a lot of bottom contact stuff, you know, skirted jigs. I'll always do a craw trailer of some kind.
I agree there.
Jig. Ned rigs. I like just the little Z-Man TRDs or whatever, the little tiny ones. That's what I had my client using yesterday. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing with this. I said, cast it up. Let it fall on a controlled slack. Make sure you hit the bottom and just twitch. And he had a little trouble with it at first, and then he caught a few and was like, I get it now. So I mean, you know, just little simple stuff like that. You know, you can throw those. I rig them on a like an offset EWG style Ned head.
Sure.
You can throw that thing in anywhere and get it back. Like, that's what I love about that.
Yes.
I will fish, you know, some paddle tail swim baits, you know, smaller stuff in the wintertime, especially like Kayak and the Lunker City Grubsters. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I fish a lot of different stuff.
Are you throwing football heads ever, Josh? Or you mostly the finesse jigs?
Mostly in like, you know, the main stretch of the Connecticut River, I'll throw football jigs, in natural lakes with deeper structure. Definitely football jigs. But when I fish shallow, I fish more of like an arky or just like a grass style jig.
Sure.
That, you know, they're great in brush too. So yeah, there's a couple spots I have on the Connecticut where you know, backwater spots where you fish in like March, and it's a lot of fishing in like, it's a mix of like riprap, brush, and then like the dying off weeds from last year. So definitely like a weed, you know, like a weed style jig, arky style jig.
That's awesome, buddy. That's awesome. Josh, I'll tell you something, buddy. We only scratched the surface, but I appreciate having you on tonight so much, buddy. I'd be interested in getting you on again, maybe later in the fall, maybe after the season slows down for you then, and talk more. I do want to keep up with the people that we get on the show and just see the different things. I was tickled pink to have you on tonight talking all these cool things. You know, it's like how often are we going to talk about somebody that's fishing for stripers and stuff? And just the cool thing is you fish for all the above. So
I just love fishing, you know. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. I'll fish for it, you know. Yeah, you can catch it on a lure, I want to go catch it. So
absolutely, buddy. So you guys, anyone in chat, if you're watching on replay, if you are looking to grab some of Josh's stuff, just connect with them. he is in his busy season. So, but if you're really jonesing to get something, and I'm going to do my own version of his Girl Scout cookie. It might not be a Girl Scout cookie anymore because it might have chartreuse, a little more chartreuse on it, but it's all good. But the thing is, that's the point, and that's why Josh is here tonight, because I want you guys to be able to take a look at some of the stuff. He's got some real cool jig designs on his website. Take a look, be inspired. Check out his Instagram page. That's the whole point of this, that we inspire each other a little bit. So, Josh, thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
It. Yeah,
it was a pleasure, man.
Clint says, Clint, are you saying Josh is chill? He is very chill. He's a good person. He's a good person. And Josh, I didn't know, but you're writing for On the Water magazine.
Yes.
So that is something we should check out too. And I'll try and look into that a little bit. But I appreciate having you on tonight, buddy.
I appreciate you having me on, man. It was a pleasure. And tell you what, man, I appreciate what you do for the jig building community at large. Like it's awesome. You know, you showcased some guys just on your Instagram that I've, started following. I'm like, oh my God, like the stuff that guy makes is so unreal, so it's really cool to see all that. And
I think at the end of the day, as long as we are able to inspire each other, that's what it's all about. And I think that's the whole point of Jig Squad. That's the magic for me, at least, and that's all I need out of it. Right. And so I can make my own jigs. I can design my own things. I could be as creative as I want. But if I don't have anyone to talk about all this cool stuff, it's going to drive me crazy. And so that's the whole point. And I think, we'll have more opportunities to do some cool stuff with Jig Squad as time goes along, but it's guys like you, Josh, that inspire me. I appreciate you a ton. Listen, stay in chat here in StreamYard here. When I end the show, my man, I would talk to you real quick for a second, but you guys, listen, Josh is awesome. You can find his links for Instagram and down below for his webpage. So go check Josh out. Go check out the jigs for sure. Be inspired. If you're interested in grabbing some, whether he has them in stock or in the fall, you got to chase them down. And I just appreciate having you on tonight, guys. Remember to hit subscribe. We got to build our community together. It is us. We're on a team with this one, folks. And hit the like, and we will see you in 2 weeks. We actually have they've been on the circuit a little bit lately. They've been jumping around with some other online shows, but another Midwest Jig Maker, Super K Jigs, is going to be coming on. But we're going to be talking about some stuff that these other shows haven't been talking about with these jig makers. So I'm excited. But until next time, guys, you can hit us up on Instagram. Hit up Josh on Instagram. I hope you all have a good night. And I think it's going to be a piece. We're out.